I'm Becky Crean. I work in clinical development at Ionis Pharmaceuticals. First, I just want to thank FAST for inviting us to be here. We're really thrilled to be talking with you today about our Angelman program and the advances we've made since we spoke with you last year here virtually as well. So let me just jump right in and see if my slides advance. So where are we today with our program? I know that's I think it went too far. There we go. So where are we today with our program? We did talk about last year here at FAST that we were planning on initiating a clinical trial with our lead compound in 2021. And even though we're here at the end of 2021, I'm really happy to report that we have done that. We submitted our program package to the FDA earlier this year, and they've given us approval to initiate the trial in the US. And to get ready, we've started initiating important startup activities such as country and site selection for this first trial. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. One important aspect of ours and any drug program, and you've heard about that a lot over the last couple of days, is to make sure we have the tools to adequately measure how people respond to the drug. And to do that, we partnered with Roche and Biogen in a natural history study to collect CSF samples in individuals with Angelman syndrome. And I think you probably heard a little bit of an update on that yesterday from Biogen. We've also partnered with Dr. Gali Heimer at Sheba Medical Center in Israel. She's also collecting CSF samples in her Angelman population in Israel. Some of you may have participated in these studies. It's really helped us start to determine how much UBE3A is in the CSF of individuals with Angelman syndrome compared to those who don't have it. And as you heard Allison just talk, it might take just a little bit of UBE3A to see changes. So these studies are really important to help us identify ways to measure that and to help inform and also de-risk our programs, not just Ionis and Biogen's program, but all the other programs as well. It's also helped us design our trials to be more efficient, which hopefully means less burden on the patients. They're not easy studies to participate in. We recognize that. Getting cerebral spinal fluid from Angelman individuals is difficult. And so we know those are hard studies to do. So we sincerely thank all of the families who've participated in those and helped advance that important science in the field. So our goal at Ionis is really to bring the best drug forward that we possibly can. And it's taken us a while, but we believe we have that compound with the best risk-benefit profile that will treat the broadest population in Angelman syndrome. So I just want to take a moment and describe a little bit about the full drug development process. You've heard a little bit about it over the last couple of days, and I won't go into a lot of detail. But you've heard that Ionis and other companies, we talk a lot about the early steps involved in finding a potential drug. You've heard us talk about testing in cells and in mice and monkeys. It starts here on the left side of this slide with very basic research. It involves identifying the target for the drug, and in our case, identifying the UBE3A gene. Then we work on what approach we want to take for that. What protein to focus on. And as you've heard us talk this morning, most of us in the ASO world are focused on that UBE3A antisense strand on the paternal gene. And so that's very, very early in discovery. We focus on optimizing our lead candidates. And then we move into preclinical research where we test the drug in different animal species. This all has to be done before we take this drug into humans. And that's where we are today. So you see this red box here. We've completed all the drug discovery and preclinical work for our lead compound. And we filed our IND application. Hang on one second. And we've received approval to begin the clinical trial. And now we are here on the right side of the screen, which is the clinical development phase. There's several phases in this process that take an equally long period of time, as you can see at the top of that schematic, and I'll talk about those in a moment. But just to stick on this for a minute, even after many studies and collecting a lot of data on the drug, which hopefully shows that it's safe and effective, that it treats the disease. You gather the enough data that you need to file your data with the FDA, which then gets reviewed by them. If they determine that the drug is truly safe and that patients benefit from the drug, then you get approval, and you can make the drug available to the broader population. It's not over there, though. You may continue on and do additional studies even once you have marketing approval, collect additional safety data, and answer additional questions the FDA may have. So it's a long process, and we're all very, very early into it, as you've been hearing the last couple of days. So that's just a little bit about the overall drug discovery process. And let me just tell you a little bit about clinical trials and what that piece is. That's the right side of that schematic I just showed you. So discovering the drug and how it's really long and involved.
They're working on it, don't worry. I see them working hard back there on this.
She has dropped out of the room at the moment, but we're trying to get her back. So.
Everyone write down your questions, because I'm sure that you just heard that a clinical trial has cleared the FDA to start in a phase 1. You're very, very excited. So everyone write down your questions and be ready to ask her, because she'll be live with us virtually. She's back.
Okay, I think I'm back. I don't see my slides. Oh, there they are. So we've been doing Zoom meetings for quite a while, and I think this is the first time I've ever completely dropped off the universe in the middle of giving a live presentation. So I'm not quite sure what happened there, but I think I'm back. I think you can hear me. I think you can see my slides. So I think I was in the middle of talking about the long clinical development phase of drug development. So let me see if I can get back on track with that. Clinical trials are, like I mentioned, the development phase of that entire spectrum I just showed you on that last schematic. And so you have to advance through these different phases, and they're very distinct phases with very specific goals. You go through those to see if your drug is safe and effective. There's typically, and I say typically because in rare disease, nothing's typical, but there is sort of a typical path you follow in this. And so there's 3 main phases of clinical trials, each with their own goals and objective. And the first one is phase 1. You hear us talk a lot about that because that's sort of the space we're all in right now. That the primary goal is to provide safety information on the drug and also determine how the drug distributes in the body. So these are typically really small studies, at most 20 to 40 people. And usually they're done in healthy volunteers. And you sometimes just start with 1 dose of a drug given to 1 volunteer. That's a typical phase 1. As I said, in rare disease, it's different. The next phase is phase 2. These are a little bit larger studies, but still small. They're typically done in patients. You move into the indication then that you want to test the drug in. Sometimes those can be 50, maybe 100 patients. The goal of those phase 2 studies is to determine that the drug continues to be safe in a larger population, and also to start to understand how the drug is engaging the target. And then there's also an opportunity to provide at least some preliminary evidence that the drug provides some clinical benefit, or you can look at clinical change. They usually involve giving multiple doses of the drug over a period of time, typically 3 months, could be even up to a year. But as I mentioned, in many rare disease programs, phase 1 and 2 studies are combined. That's certainly the case in Angelman. So you try to pack a lot into fewer studies because of the nature of the disorder and the population. And then there's phase 3 trials over there on the right. These are much larger studies. They're designed really to establish the safety of the drug in a large number of patients, in the hundreds to thousands sometimes, and also to show evidence of clinical benefit. These are what you hear about is called pivotal registration trials. These are the trials that provide the information that the regulators want to see in order to approve the drug. So I think my slides advanced there. So some since clinical studies are conducted in people, both healthy volunteers and patients, some of you in the audience and online may have an opportunity to participate or have already started participating in a trial. But as I just mentioned, not many of you will. But how do you know if you should participate in a trial or not? I mean, that's a really, really important decision, and we all understand that it's a big commitment. So just a couple of things to consider if you're thinking about it, if the opportunity arises, is you certainly want to discuss it with your family. This is a family event. It's important to educate yourself as much as you can about what it means to be in a clinical trial and what's expected of you and your family. It's not treatment. It's truly an investigational clinical trial. And so those mean different things to different people, and it'll impact whether you feel like it's the right thing for you or not and your family to participate. The ASF and FAST have put together a great website noted here on the slide, and that has a lot of helpful and detailed information about what it means to participate in a trial. It's also important to talk with your child's doctor to get more information. Often your own doctor isn't the same as who's conducting the study. So you can talk with your child's doctor, better understand the drugs that are being studied in the trial and what would be expected of you if you did participate. So if you do decide that participating in a trial is right for you and your family, then there's some important steps that must happen before you even enroll. And that is that you have to give your informed consent to participate. And in this case, it's typically the parent or the caregiver who gives the consent for the child. That's the very first step in the process, and it's an important one. And so before any study procedures can be done, you'll be told all about the study. You'll be able to ask all the questions you have so that you can make an informed decision on whether to participate or not. If you do decide to participate and you give your informed consent, then you will start the screening process, you and your child. And if they're eligible to participate, then you can enroll. So those are the very first steps that happen when you decide to participate in a trial. And I'm assuming my slides are still advancing. I'm not quite sure if they are or not. Let's see.
They look great.
Okay, so here's some other important terms to be aware of that describe those first steps of the process. So after you've given your consent, which we just talked about, then you'll start with the screening visit. And those are visits to check if you have all of the inclusion and criteria and none of the exclusion criteria. And you heard Dr. Lisbury Kravitz earlier and Dr. Scott Stromat talk a little bit about the inclusion and exclusion criteria for their trial. Each trial has their own. Some criteria will be similar and then there will be some unique ones for each trial. But the inclusion criteria are those things that are required that allow you to take part in the trial. The exclusion criteria are those factors that would prevent you from participating in a trial. Some of those factors could be a person's health history, past treatment, age, even sometimes geography, where you live, and if you can reasonably get to a site or not. So if you're determined to have all of the inclusion and none of the exclusion criteria for the trial, then you're considered eligible to join the study. If you're eligible, then you'll be enrolled into the trial, which means that you'll then follow the whole clinical trial protocol, follow all of the procedures associated with that trial. And so here's just a few things about sort of the do's and don'ts of clinical trials. And we understand it's an enormous responsibility to be enrolled and to participate in one of these. Especially in these early trials, only a really small group of families can participate. And if you think about it, if you combine all of the open slots, you've heard about 66 patients or 40 patients, if you combined all of the open slots across all of the trials going on right now in the community, and including the one Ionis is initiating, it's a really small number. And in the entire Angelman community, it's less than 0.5% who might even have the opportunity to participate in the trial. So it's just something to keep in mind. But these are the reasons why these early trials are so small. As I described some of those a moment ago, it's really to start to understand what happens with the drug and with the patient in the first few trials of when you give the drug to a human. So really important to start small, and then they get bigger at each phase, as I showed just a moment ago. It's a necessary process. It's frustrating. It's long. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but it is a necessary process that we all companies have to follow, so that eventually a drug can hopefully make it all the way to the end for approval, and be made available to the entire community. That's our goal and everyone's goal here. So that's, for those of you who are enrolled in trial, it's important to follow all the instructions. As I mentioned, each trial will have different instructions, but in any trial, there are some critical pieces that'll help ensure that the trial is successful. And when I say successful, I don't mean that it shows that something changed. I mean successful in that it gives us the answers to the questions we wanted to ask in the trial. So it'll be important to attend all of the study appointments, whether those are in the clinic, some are done through a phone call or even through an app on your phone. You'll want to accurately fill out all the study questionnaires. You've heard everybody talk about all the different measures that are being administered in these trials. There's a lot of them. So accurately completing them is really important in these trials. Each of the trials are designed to answer really specific questions and important ones about each drug, so that companies can understand how the drug behaves and how it works in individuals with Angelman syndrome. It's also equally important that families enrolled in a trial don't share information. We've talked about these being open label, no placebo, not wanting to confound results. So it's important that you don't share information or discuss the trial with others or post things about your experience on social media. All of these things, believe it or not, can actually impact the data that we collect during the trial. So there is some good study hygiene that'll need to be followed, which is vital to the success of all of these programs. And the more successes we have, and the more opportunities we'll have to bring treatments to the Angelman community. Okay, so let me introduce you to HALOS. This is Ionis's our first clinical trial that we're initiating. I'm really excited to share with you that we're ready to launch this trial. As I mentioned, we have FDA approval, and we're continuing around the globe to get additional approvals. As with the other ASOs you've been hearing about, this too will be administered with an intrathecal injection into the spinal canal, which is, as you've heard, that space around the spine. It'll be done with a lumbar puncture, and all the participants will be given anesthesia, make them go to sleep for a little while during the short time that it takes to give the drug. And I mentioned before that often with rare diseases, we combine phases for a clinical trial. So this one, as with the other ones you've heard about, will be a combination of a phase 1 and a phase 2. So that means, though, that each child will receive several doses of the ASO over a period of 3 months, and everyone will receive drug. There's not a placebo in this trial. We'll enroll a broad age range in this first trial, including young kids up to adults, but different age groups may be staggered and enter the study at different times. And during the trial, you and your child will be given tests. As I mentioned, we take this opportunity to measure as much clinical change as we can over the course of the trial. But we also try to measure the things that we know are most important to you and your family, like talking, walking, sleeping, learning information. Some of these tests in this trial will be done in the clinic. And as with others, other trials out there that you may be aware of, there's also things that are done at the home too. We know it's important to see how kids and families are affected in a trial at home in their natural environment. So we'll do that as well in this one. This will be a global study with sites not only in the United States, but around the world. As I mentioned, we've got approval in the United States and we're working on the rest of the countries, and that'll include Italy, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Israel, Canada, the UK, and Australia as well. There may be others, and they'll all come up at different time points during the trial. Our primary goal in this first study is to assess the safety of the drug, make sure it can be tolerated, and we'll also measure these clinical changes, as I mentioned. So here's just a schematic of the visits and the timing in the trial. As I mentioned, there'll be some visits in the clinic that you see up there on the top, and those visits will include when the drug is administered. And then there'll be things done at home as well. During the trial, you'll complete some other tests. We'll capture meaningfulness and important activities of your child so we can see how those change. For this first trial, as with the others, it'll be small. Only about 45 participants can be enrolled, but the age range is pretty broad. It's 2 years up to 50 years. We'll enroll patients with either deletion or mutation in the UBE3A gene, and participants must be able to undergo sedation in order to receive the drug. So initially, the trial will last 3 months with a follow-up period, but as with the other trials, we will amend that study to add a long-term extension at a later date when we have the additional toxicology data to support that extension. But even though we start out with 3 months, we do intend to extend that to a longer treatment phase once we have the data to support that. So this is just an overview of the trial, and we'll continue to update the community as we confirm more details of the study. And the important thing is, I'm sure you're wanting to know, is when will sites be open and begin to enroll? And we just encourage everyone to go to clinicaltrials.gov website. That'll list all of the details about the trial, and it'll also list all of the sites once they are open for enrollment. So once a site gets activated, it'll be listed on clinicaltrials.gov. So that's a good resource to keep checking back with, not only for this HELOS trial, but all the trials as well. So with that, I just want to express my sincere appreciation for listening and for your time today, and just let you know that all of us at Ionis and Biogen are truly deeply committed to continue our work on behalf of the Angelman community, and we know we can't do it without you. So we want to thank you for your commitment to doing this together as well. So thank you.